I don't really know like a good way to phrase this, so I'll just ask it simply. Could you tell us about how prison was? I know that's like a dumb question, but I understand that your experience there was quite profound.
It was. Thanks for asking me, and thank you for having me, Jordan. Always a pleasure. I love your journalism. Prison was far more complicated and frankly difficult than I had expected for various reasons. One is it was much more isolating than I had imagined it would be. I couldn't really communicate to the outside. A lot of that had to do with the fact during most of the time I was in the prison. This is Danbury, Connecticut. It's a low-level federal prison, but it is a prison. I lived in a cell. It was locked down because of COVID, and we couldn't get outside. Could get outside maybe once a week to the yard to walk around. There were 2 phones for 80 people. Internet was very restricted. I mean, we couldn't get internet access, and then email, you had to use their system that they monitored, and it cost money, and a lot of people didn't have money. Visits were virtually impossible because of the virus. And essentially, it was virtually impossible to communicate with the outside. And I found that not to be what I had expected. I thought I'd get a lot of visitors and really be able to continue, to some degree, my work. Now, on the other hand, there were some incredible moments inside, a tremendous amount of humanity, people living there, some for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, even lifers, showing each other a lot of respect, a lot of mutual support, a lot of, inmates helping craft legal briefs and, writing poetry and engaging in all sorts of creative activities to really keep sane and keep alive. So in a place that is designed to isolate and designed to keep you down, I saw people connecting and rising up. So it was simultaneously very isolating and depressing, but also empowering. I don't know if that makes any sense. I mean, we're so used to social media platforms and, cell phones and talking to whomever we want when we want. Couldn't do that there. And people ended up really relying on their human connections to each other to survive. And there was something kind of nice about that in a way that doesn't really happen on the outside. But make no mistake, prison is brutal. And, while the Bureau of Prisons, which runs this prison and all of our federal prisons, I think does generally tries to do a very professional job, the way the system is designed makes it very difficult for inmates to access programs, education, the things they need to acquire the tools to succeed on the outside. And, I'll just mention in closing, and whatever my particular experience, our federal prison system has a 65% recidivism rate. I mean, it's not an institution that's succeeding in any way, shape, or form in its goal of, reintegrating people back into society. So, there's a lot of work to be done. It made me think about a lot of issues, the connections between the injustices in the prison system and in the justice system, the injustices in Ecuador with the indigenous peoples getting, completely screwed over by Chevron's refusal to pay the judgment that the indigenous peoples won to clean up Chevron's pollution. It's all connected, right? So, I'm a lawyer on civil case, historical, environmental case, and I'm in prison now, or was. I'm still, by the way, under detention at home. But, in prison for 45 days with people who also, in their own way, were getting completely screwed over by the U.S. justice system, even if they had done something wrong, as many had. The sentences were crazy long, and it was a very difficult place to survive as a human being. But people managed, and I'm proud of my fellow friends in there whom I met and connected with. If they ever see this, I want to tell them I'm thinking of them, and I miss them, and I say hello.
I wanted to ask about in the prison, because it's my understanding that you were basically the only one there for a misdemeanor, or not a serious, serious felony, or most of them were violent offenders. Can you kind of talk about? You seem to have stood out for being very different for the reasons you were there.
Well, I think that's very true. I was absolutely the only person in a 900-man prison on a misdemeanor. Everybody else was on a felony. Kind of underscored in my mind that the whole thing was orchestrated by Judge Kaplan, Judge Preska, Chevron, to impose upon me a level of suffering that no one had ever seen before for this level of offense. And I'll assert again my innocence to this ridiculousness that Judge Kaplan has tried to impose on me, that, contempt of court, when I was actually litigating on behalf of my clients in Ecuador, one of his discovery orders in a civil case, and I end up in prison without a jury for 6 months, or on a 6-month sentence. So, yeah, I think everybody from the prison staff to the other residents. By the way, I hate the word inmate. I can't figure out another word. I'm calling the people my fellow residents of the Danbury prison. They were all befuddled to see a person like me there. They're like, "Why are you here? We never see this in this prison.
Mhm.
We never see first-time misdemeanor defendants in prison. They're put on probation, sent home, fined. So the fact Judge Preska gave me a 6-month sentence on top of over 2 years of pretrial house arrest for a misdemeanor, when no other lawyers even spent one day detained either at home or in prison for this level of offense, is an outrage. And I'll repeat it. It's an outrage. And it's wrong that I'm still under detention. Even though I'm home and I was released early, I'm not free. Okay, I am being monitored, and I cannot leave my home except under very narrow circumstances with permission of an officer of the Bureau of Prisons. So, we've been calling Amnesty International, and others have been calling on Attorney General Garland to take back the case. I'll remind people I was prosecuted not by the U.S. government, but by a private Chevron law firm, and get this thing dismissed. Right now I have until April 25th at home. That's roughly 4 months, 120, 130 days. I've already served 813 days under these exact same conditions for nothing, for being held prior to my trial. So why doesn't that count, the 813 days, toward the 120 days I have left, and why am I not being released? It's really wrong. So we are, again, my lawyers, my supporters, Amnesty International, other major groups around the world, the Nobel Peace Laureates who have been helping me, are calling on Attorney General Garland to uphold the rule of law in the United States and to prevent any further private criminal prosecutions by corporations, which is what happened to me for the first time in U.S. history, and of course, release me immediately.